What's up, everybody, from Energy Field in Energy Stadium, I should say, in Houston, Texans. In Houston, the Texans just beat the Bills 23-20. And man, Ryan, there is so much to get into in this ball game. It looked like it was going to be a laugher. The Bills get back into it in the second half. A lot to get into in terms of how the Bills weren't able to take advantage of all of these opportunities the Texans were giving them to win this game. We'll get into all of that. We're brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets as always. Rush to the Tops Red Zone right now. Get game day ready with Tops. Score big savings, winning recipes, and everything you need for the ultimate game day experience. Head to the Tops Red Zone in store for all your game day essentials and more. And, I guess it's at least softens the blow or maybe makes it worse, depending on how you want to look at it. The AFC, there's so many situations that are crumbling. The AFC East is about as bad as it's been in a long time. And the Bills had an opportunity to go to 4-1 today, and they could not take advantage of it.
Yeah, this is a bad division. You have the Jets falling below 500. But you have the Dolphins winning their second game with a backup quarterback against the Patriots. And they're inching closer and closer to Tua's return. It sounds like after his IR stint or after the 4 weeks, he's going to be close to coming back, getting cleared. So if they're still in this, that kind of makes them, a team to kind of watch. The Jets, for being at 2-3, they really gave the Vikings a fight today, made it interesting to the very end. And, you had the Bills had the opportunity to move to 4-1 today, where in the second half, they kind of got things going. I think after the one big miscue down the field on the long touchdown, the defense settled in really nicely, but they couldn't take advantage of that. And now they're sitting here at 3-2, Matt, with both of their losses coming to teams that at the end of the year with playoff seeding, these could end up ultimately hurting the Bills because you expect the Texans in that terrible division to run away with it. And then obviously the Ravens finding ways to win again today against Cincinnati in overtime. They're going to be a team in the mix for a high seed. So all of this hurts the Bills little by little here, but you're right. The division itself does not look very good.
So Nico Collins leaves this game in the first half after that big touchdown. I think it was a couple of plays later, maybe a third down play where he hurt his hamstring. And the complexion of the game changed a lot. I mean, he had 2 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown in a little over a quarter before he exits the game. And so that's where I felt like the Bills were able to kind of get settled defensively, at least, and kind of get their footing after a strong start. I mean, they came out, forced a 3-and-out. You saw Dwayne Carter with a tackle for a loss early in the game. And then over the course of the game, I mean, possession by possession, Ryan, it's crazy. They go 5 punts in their first 6 possessions, touchdown, and then 3 punts in their next 4 possessions. So it's like it was an offense out of sync. And even with all of that, one of the most out of sync, inefficient games for Josh Allen that I can remember, maybe even back to 2019, 2020 in this stadium. And you got that happening. You have a group of wide receivers where we're going to have to go one by one and really count the ways that, there's some concerns here. But even with all of that, you have the defense come up with a stop, which you think is going to force a long field goal. On that play, CJ Stroud gives the Bills more life by intentional grounding penalty. They're forced to punt. There is, at that point, was it 41 seconds left?
Close to that, 39, 41, somewhere in that range.
Let me bring it up here. So they punt with middle punts to with 41 seconds exactly left. Okay. 41 seconds left. The Bills get the ball. They run 3 straight passing plays. The first one is a deep left incompletion to Keon Coleman. The next is an incompletion deep left to Mac Hollins. And the third is a pass incomplete deep to Curtis Samuel. And to me, this is a perfect snapshot of the problem in this game across the board. You have a group of wide receivers not making enough plays when there's plays to be made, which I think in turn, and I'm not trying to let Josh Allen off the hook because he had plenty of plays in this game where it wasn't good. It could have been a better pass. It could have been a better pass down to Mac Hollins. There could have been a better pass at one point to Curtis Samuel where he had to kind of turn his whole body around in the backfield. I think it ended up turning into a rushing play because of where the ball was.
Yeah.
But it was just an offense that wasn't in sync. I put out a stat before we started the show. The Bills in this game today averaged 5 point yards per rush in this game as compared to 4.1 yards per pass. First and foremost, that is a troubling stat in and of itself. But how are you then going to turn around and not run one single time to try to get the Texans to use a timeout? And who knows, maybe you make enough of a play on a running play to change the complexion of the drive when you're backed up to your 3-yard line. And Sean McDermott came out and he owned it. You put up a story about all of the reaction across social media about how bad it was to bungle that thing. He didn't want to get into the details, maybe throwing Joe Brady under the bus. But whether or not Joe Brady wanted to make those calls, it's still on Sean McDermott ultimately. And it's why, honestly, you could kind of say here, Ryan, that there's been some growth for Sean McDermott since 13 seconds, because that was my biggest contention with the way that he handled that, is he never just came out and said, it's all on me. So in this moment, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, maybe he has learned a little something to say, ultimately, that's my fault. I got to be better from that. And I don't know if that plays in the locker room, but this is a game that the Bills should have at least had a chance to win. And it was kind of taken from them by McDermott in that moment.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that moment, man. I'll go back to the previous series where ultimately the Texans punted the ball after the penalty on third down that pushed them out of field goal range. McDermott burns the team's final 2 timeouts on a first down and a second down play. It wasn't even like they had the Texans punting at that point. It set up a third down. It gave the Texans time to come up with a good play to get the first down, a tight end pass across the middle, if I remember correctly, on that play. So he burns his final 2 timeouts. And in that scenario, it looked like you said, the Texans were going to be able to set up for a game-winning field goal run the time off the clock. It just ultimately didn't pan out that way. It was with Stroud throwing it in an area where there was no receiver, getting the penalty, and the Bills getting the ball back. But then you get the ball back, and I don't care if it's short passes. I don't care if it's deep passes. When the Bills get that ball back, Matt, 3-yard line buried in your own end, Texans have all 3 timeouts. Going into that drive, no Bills pass catcher had more than 2 receptions in this game. Separation was not happening. It just wasn't. They could not get open. It was pretty damning, honestly. It shows you the importance of Khalil Shakir to this offense as a guy that can get open for you quickly. No one could create separation. So you decide to come out and you throw 3 straight passes. Then, I don't love the deep shots over trying to get short intermediate stuff to at least pick up that first down. But in my mind, it was the easiest decision. Yeah, it's predictable, but you run the ball 3 times because of how deep you are in your own end. You cause the Texans to burn all 3 of their timeouts if you don't get that first down. And then when you kick it away, the Texans might not even be able to get a play off at that point because they might be thinking, okay, the Bills are going to be playing the sidelines. We don't have any timeouts left. We have to be smart about this. And lo and behold, that doesn't happen. They get the ball back with all 3 timeouts. Dorian Williams isn't on the field. That falls on the head coach too, not having 11 guys out on the field until there's 12 seconds left in the play. Doesn't necessarily know what the play call is. You drop your safeties so far back on the play that it makes no sense. And then they get a 5-yard completion, 59-yard field goal. They win the game. All of that goes back on your head coach at the end of the day. Just baffling decision after baffling decision. And it makes you wonder if this is the guy for the job. For as much success as he's had, he still has these brain fart moments.
Justin Tyndall with a super chat. Take the 10 seconds run off first play with the 32-second left. Did McDermott think offense was going to go 50 yards in at least 30 seconds? He talked about this in his post-game press conference, and his explanation for that play came down to, you have the 10-second runoff, and they still are able to find a way to make a play. Listen, I want to go back to a point here because I think it was the Macaronial over on YouTube. Great name. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe as well. We're almost 12,000. I'm making a point here on McDermott that I do think that there's some growth in owning it and not running away from or deflecting the blame. Right. I'm not letting him off the hook for the decision-making at the end of the game. I was as frustrated with it as anybody else tweeting through it at the end of the game. I said, make it make sense with why you think in that situation with the way that and here's the other thing, Ryan, the way the pass game struggled throughout the game gave you zero confidence in the approach that they took. And to a micro level, to Joe Brady, If you're Joe Brady in that moment, you have been pounding the rock all game long, as many runs as passes throughout the game. And for a big chunk of it, it was working. I was talking to David Edwards after the game. He's like, if they're going to stay in nickel, we're going to stay in our jumbo package and continue to kind of rely on the run. Was it always super fruitful? No. As the game went along, it felt like they were reading it more. I think the Bills became a little bit more predictable. It doesn't feel like they're using as much pre-snap motion, but Josh Allen was under siege today. He was pressured, I believe it was 16 times. He went 1 of 14 on those 16 plays. And this is a guy that over the course of the first 3 games of the season was as deadly as anybody in the league when he was pressured. So whatever teams have adjusted and are doing against the Bills, and I got to go back and watch this game back, it's working.
Yeah, it's absolutely working. And, in this game specifically, I think it wasn't so much of what the Texans did. It's just that Buffalo doesn't have the personnel to win off the line in those scenarios. And you have a rookie like Keon Coleman, who, to his credit, biggest play of his career to date on that 4th and 5 conversion for a touchdown. But you have another route where he runs out there like he's going to be blocking and takes a ball off the helmet. You have a play where Curtis Samuel is not ready for the ball, and that's way worse for Samuel than it is for Coleman, a veteran, a guy that's played in a Joe Brady offense before, being a complete non-factor. You're seeing that Mac Hollins can make some plays here and there, but he should not be pressed into such a large role. MVS is
Ryan, he's not pressed into a large role. They're not being pressed into putting him into a large role. They did this themselves.
That's true. But with Khalil Shakir out this game, it felt like an even bigger opportunity for him in this game.
He had 6 targets last week.
Right.
They've leaned into Mac Hollins since the start of training camp.
And when they had him above Coleman on the depth chart.
Right. And it's like, I get it. You don't have anybody else because you brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You can't even get him out there on the field on a week when you have Tyrell Shavers up. Yeah. I'm going to be interested to see the snap count tomorrow. I think Shavers played more snaps than MVS. I don't have it in front of me. The snap counts come out in the morning, but it's unacceptable. This is the part of it where I'll push back on Bean's plan. It's like, if you want to go into everybody eats, right, and this new look offensive skill set, where's Dawson Knox? He's invisible.
Nothing.
He didn't have a target today.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he had a nice block downfield on Coleman's touchdown, but that's another guy that you paid big money to. Despite, maybe going in knowing you're going to be drafting a tight end in the near future which they end up doing with Dalton Kincaid. And he has done absolutely nothing this year. There's a lot to criticize about Buffalo's plan. The motto of everyone eats, Matt, they're starving. They are absolutely starving these last 2 weeks. This offense is terrible. The way that the lack of separation, the lack of getting open, and it's up to Brandon Beane to do something now if he wants to. I hate to say salvage this season after 5 weeks. That sounds dramatic, but things aren't going to necessarily get better when Shakir gets back. Yeah, he helps this offense a lot, but then you're one injury away again from being in this same boat. See what's out there. Amari Cooper is the guy that would make the most sense to me in Cleveland. Their season looks like it's over at 1-4. He's owed less than $1 million. He is not a premier, true number one receiver necessarily at this point in his career like a Devontae Adams, but the Raiders apparently want the new team to take on the majority of that $13 million that he's owed. Buffalo can't do that. You can look at a Romeo Doubs in Green Bay, but has Doubs done enough to prove in his young career that he would be a difference maker for Buffalo? I'd probably say no. But Beane has to go out there and see who's available, see what he can do with these draft picks that you have, where a mid-round pick might be able to get you someone on those final year of their contract type scenario like Cooper is right now. Something needs to change because they are not getting enough production in this wide receiver room. The tight end room either. Dalton Kincaid, I thought going into this season, this was going to be this monster year. Going to be tops in the league in a lot of categories among tight ends. And it just seems like it's so difficult to get him the ball now too. And I don't know if it's how defenses are playing him. Some games it certainly has been this year. But him in stride today makes a great play. But again, no more than 2 receptions for any pass catcher on this team in this loss.
It's easy to second guess. It's easy to look back with 2020 vision, but even at the time, it felt like Brian Thomas Jr., we talked about this several times. You see him in the season that he's having in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, and you think about, okay, sure, the Bills added draft assets for next year, but why not just use them then and go up and get the guy that, I think could have been a year one difference maker. I think Keon Coleman out, Brian Thomas Jr. in this offensive receiving room. And listen, I get it. Mac Hollins plays special teams. I'm so tired of the special teams argument. I don't know of any elite offense that prioritizes special team skills for their wide receiving group.
Yeah.
And here's the difference in the Kansas City model that maybe I'm as guilty as anybody is not spending enough time poking into is you can go away from Tyreek Hill when the Chiefs did because they had the best tight end in the history of the game, arguably. The Bills don't have that. The Bills are hoping that Dalton Kincaid can become a top 5 tight end in the NFL, but he's not there. He wasn't there after last season despite his 73 catches, and he hasn't looked like it so far this year because if it is teams game planning to take him out, he's not good enough yet, or may never be good enough to take that and still find a way to have success in games anyway. He had a drop today, 6 targets, 2 catches. That is not good enough for the guy that's supposed to be your top target. And oh, by the way, Dawson Knox isn't even a factor in the passing game.
Right. And we talked in this draft class how they should have double dipped at the wide receiver position. I was still stunned after the fact that they didn't do that. And you look now, and you're right, over the years, they've prioritized when they have taken receivers late in drafts. Let's go get a guy that has some special teams acumen to their game. And, speedy Marquez Stevenson comes in, and his stints as forgettable as any in this league. And Justin Shorter over a Puka Nacua. And I don't know where the Bills had Puka Nacua on their draft board. But a movement like that where 1 year later, Shorter's on a practice squad converting to tight end. But you thought, man, this guy could really be a special teams asset for us. And now at the bottom of the roster, same thing. Hey, these guys can help on special teams. Who cares? One, for the most part, kickoffs are just going into the end zone. I know that you need punt coverage. You need some help there, but that should not prioritize bringing in players, adding players via free agency in the draft who can actually help you more so in the offensive game plan, in the offensive room on the depth chart over they're really good at getting downfield and making tackles on special teams.
Thank you so much for checking in. I know it's been a frustrating day. 7:00 here Eastern on a Sunday. The Bills lose 23-20 in a game that felt like it was going to be another, one-sided affair, and Bills kind of come back and make it close. And I think we should probably spend a minute talking about this defense here, Ryan, because I actually you think about it, Ed Oliver out. I thought Dwayne Carter stepped up, played pretty well at times today.
Yeah.
I thought Dorian Williams, they're onto something here with Dorian Williams in a big way. Yep. Terrell Bernard gets back. He starts things off in the fourth quarter with an interception. Then it's DeJuan Smoot who gets a pressure, a sack, strips C.J. Stroud. And that's another kind of big knock on the offense. You get 2 fourth-quarter turnovers for this Texans offense that just isn't turning the ball over, and you get 3 points on those 2 drives. How unfair is that to this defense?
Very unfair. And, I don't know what the rationale was by Bernard not getting up and running with the ball. He came down with it. Stefan Diggs was immediately blocked out of the way. There was no defender there. He just kind of gave himself up on the play. I don't know how much real estate he would have had, but the way the offense was playing today, I would have at least liked to have seen him get up and try to get some additional yards. But they blew some opportunities, Matt. James Cook was close to hauling in a sideline pass where his elbow almost hits inbounds, which would have set up a 1st and goal, but they couldn't do anything. They settled for a field goal on one opportunity to tie the game, and everything was just so difficult for them. And early in the game, they were running the ball well. They kind of went away from it. Then it became a little predictable, like you said. They're doing a lot of the same things. They're not the pre-snap motion that we were accustomed to earlier this season. The Texans kind of had a good feel for what the Bills are trying to do. Allen was getting pressured all game, but that's got to be frustrating because early on in this matchup, the defense let up 2 big plays. Cam Akers goes in untouched for a touchdown run. And then obviously the big play downfield where Cole Bishop Blue coverage on the plane. Kudos to Rasul Douglas for being the veteran, kind of saying, kind of taking some of the blame for that and telling the rookie after the game, I've already forgotten about it. I hope you have too. Bishop in that moment was in the wrong. He didn't cover downfield. He struggled at sometimes, took some bad angles early in the game, but even he settled in as the game went on. I thought Dwayne Carter was excellent. 3 tackles, 2 for a loss. He had some push where maybe he didn't make a play in that given play, but he at least pushed the lineman back into Stroud's lap a little bit, made him move. So really impressed there. The pass rush wasn't great, though. Greg Rousseau, a few times he had to come up with a sack, and he just kind of whiffed on it. And I know Stroud has some mobility to him, but you need plays like that from him. Dorian Williams, who you mentioned, phenomenal, Matt. I'm not saying that the Bills need to move on from Matt Milano anytime soon necessarily, but I'm starting to think that if they wanted to get out of that contract down the road, especially with the injuries that we've seen, there's an opportunity because Dorian Williams, the way he's playing in this defense, it reminds me a lot of the trajectory of Terrell Bernard last year, where as a rookie and he got on the field, looked a little bit lost out there. Now that he's playing, you see the athleticism, you see him flying around to the ball. I think he finished with 12 total tackles today, had the fumble recovery. Just great across the game. Bernard with 2 huge plays in his return, causing a turnover on downs, getting that interception. You feel bad for the defense because they really did come on in that second half and the offense let them down.
I'm not surprised about Cole Bishop struggling out of the gate here.
Yeah.
He definitely did say that he got comfortable as the game went along, and that's to be expected. I mean, to miss the entire summer for the most part, I think really set him back. And I think, a lot of people asking about Mike Edwards. He was up today. He was obviously the first option off the bench. The fact that he hasn't gone to the game, I think that they think Cole Bishop is better than Mike Edwards, and that's fine. I mean, you drafted the kid in the second round. You kind of see some natural speed and reaction at times. At times, he's looked a little bit lost, but I think you kind of got to see the bigger picture too. And I know that you're sitting here right now. This was a winnable game, and if you're a Bills fan, you're frustrated because if you have a little bit better coaching there down the stretch, you might be able to sneak this thing away. But you also can kind of flip that thing around. And I'm not defending Sean McDermott. But if they do force overtime and then they lose in overtime, you're still sitting here at 3-2 with a loss. And I think the biggest point that I want to make right now about the season, because I've seen a lot of just, woe is me, the season is over, everything is terrible. This is a year where there's a lot of parity in the AFC. I'm not impressed with the teams at the top. I think Baltimore came back and won today. I think Cincinnati gave them everything they can handle. I think last week was a bad matchup. The Bills are down a lot of their important players, but all those players are going to come back. And, they're going to get a stretch of games here after the Jets game. And I think the Jets is a winnable game with the way that offense is playing. So I don't think when you went into this stretch, I think week 1, you tell yourself, if you get through these first 6 games and you're sitting there 4-2, even 3-3, you have a chance to be 4-2 still. You're feeling pretty good about the place that you're at after this start. And, I think you're looking at Cincinnati at 1-4 right now and the uphill battle that they have to get back. And a lot of people had them as one of the top Super Bowl contenders going into the season. So the season's not over. They got a lot of, room to improve for sure, especially this offense. And I think with the way the defense has answered the bell the last 2 weeks, based off of the success the Bills have had the first 3 weeks of the game, this is a adjustment-based league. Teams are going to watch tape. They're going to make adjustments. And now the Bills got offensively have to adjust back. And it'll be interesting to see if they can do that next week.
Yeah, and next week will be very interesting because I can see the Bills defense having a lot of success against this Jets offense. The offensive line that the Jets have is absolutely atrocious watching that game. It's a miracle that Rodgers is still healthy at this point. He was down on the field at one point in the game against the Vikings, 1 point last week. He's just taking so much of hits and pounding right now that I don't anticipate him being able to necessarily stay healthy over the course of the year, but I think the Bills can get home against him. What's going to be the challenge, though, is this is another great defense. We saw the Jets defense and the way they made Sam Darnold look awful in this game after a really nice first quarter. They're going to make life difficult for Josh Allen, especially if Khalil Shakir is not able to go in this one. So I'm looking at a low-scoring affair, but definitely a winnable game for the Bills.
I'm still seeing some people Horrible team. They stink. I get the frustration. Like, this is one of those ones where you look back at the end of the year and say the one seed somehow comes down to the Texans and the Bills and you lose it because of this. It's like, it's those little moments that, and the one seed, I think it's more about the bye week than it is even the home field advantage, because we saw the Bills lose at home to the Chiefs last year. So that is what it is. One little bright spot too. I mean, Tyler Bass going 2 for 2, I believe, in field goals today, has to have you feeling a little bit better about him after, some shakiness at times. None of them were super long kicks. And obviously Kaimi Fairbairn is somebody that, Sean McDermott was very complimentary of after the game, somebody that, sending him out there, there's a chance to make a play. But I think for me, the biggest point that I'm watching in the next couple of weeks is how this offense, the skill position players specifically, respond to this. Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, Dalton Kincaid, they ran out of the locker room today. They didn't want to talk about it. I don't know if there's a level of frustration. I don't know if it was a lack of accountability. It's hard to say when you didn't get a chance to talk to them. And so I wonder how they respond to this as a unit, because the marching orders have been everybody eats. But right now, to your earlier point, this offense is starved for plays in the passing game.
They're starved, and you wish you would have been able to hear from those players after the game. Curtis Samuel, first and foremost, this was his opportunity to shine. This was his game to get more snaps, get a chance to make some plays. And once again, the Bills don't want him to run routes. It feels like we're going to throw these short passes, and if he does catch it, he's going to get tackled though for a 1 yard gain, 1 yard loss. He's not ready for the ball at other times. The fact that the Bills went out and gave this guy $8 million per year on average over 3 years told me at the time that they envisioned him being a big part of this offense, having a decent role in this offense, and we have not seen it through these first 4 games. It's been a major disappointment in terms of how they've utilized him. So some of this doesn't fall on him. Some of it falls on Joe Brady. But some of it falls on him as well in terms of not being able to step up in this situation. Mac Hollins, I think you put it really well, Matt. They've just kind of elevated this guy since he's joined the Bills. They loved his leadership. They had him high on the depth chart above Keon Coleman all summer long. They expected him to play a big role in this offense, and he made a few nice catches today. But downfield, he wins on a double move. He's wide open, and Allen would probably love to have put a little bit less on that one, considering how much separation there was on that play. But it hits him in the hands. He just doesn't have that extra gear to necessarily go up or go down the field and get that one. It was still a catchable ball. You're not getting enough. And you have a lot of players here that over the years have helped out. Dawson Knox, to your point, no targets, no catches, no nothing, just a missing member of this offense today. It's very frustrating if you're a Bills fan watching this, because, Joe Brady, the way he came in as interim OC and turned things around late in the season, it looked promising. The way that the Bills started over this first 3 weeks of the year, this offense looked unbelievable. Now, they were without their best receiver today, but it still doesn't make up for the performance that Josh Allen had and that these pass catchers had, or the lack of production that they had against the Houston Texans.
Dawson Knox has 5 targets in 5 games, 3 catches, 30 yards. He has the 7th highest cap hit on the Bills right now, higher than any wide receiver on the team. And you probably sit here and, frustration with Dawson Knox, hating his contract. Some fans have even seen wanting to get rid of him. But I kind of want to shift the focus to what were you thinking as the brain trust of this organization going into this season, continuing this 12 personnel track that you're on and not having more of a commitment to it? That to me is what's lacking the most. And that's where I would be the most frustrated with Brady. If I was Brandon Beane, I'd be having a meeting with Brady and Sean McDermott and saying, this is our skill players, right? Dalton Kincaid, first round pick. Dawson Knox, 7.7 cap hit. He's averaging $12.5 million per season. We're paying him. Use the players that we have. And I don't think that the game plan especially the last 2 weeks, is set up well to get these guys involved and get them going. Now, Dalton Kincaid had dropped today. You can make an argument about that. I get it. But part of that's got to be on the play caller to put these guys in a position to make plays. There doesn't seem to be a commitment to the identity that they've built. And that's on their collective. It's not necessarily on Dawson Knox. When you were sitting here, you just paid him $12 million a season, you draft Dalton Kincaid, and you don't have a good plan for how you're going to use both of them. They've never had a good plan since Kincaid's arrived.
Yeah, and that's the most surprising part because the Bills wanted Kincaid so badly in the first round. And listen, he had a great rookie season. Hasn't had a great sophomore year yet. And obviously, without Stefan Diggs here in this offense, it probably has put more pressure on Kincaid in a bigger role. And the way defenses have played him has factored into this. But you have a 1-2 punch at tight end where these guys are both athletic. They're both guys that can catch the ball. And you're not utilizing that enough. You're not running out enough of the 12 personnel. You're not giving Dawson Knox opportunities. And Knox has been frustrating over the years. There's no denying that. The drops at times. But he's not even getting opportunities right now. You just mentioned it. 5 targets, 3 receptions, 3 or 4 games, and he's one of your highest played members on offense. He's got to have a role in this thing. And if they ever do have a meeting like that, like you mentioned, Matt, if I'm Brandon Beane, I would say, hey, Joe, you said let's go out and get Curtis Samuel. Had 1,000 total yards for you in 2020 in Carolina. Like, why all of a sudden do you not know how to use this guy? It wasn't just these quick screens in Carolina. He was getting open downfield. He was being used creatively in the backfield, yes, because of an injury at running back, but they showed a lot more willingness to let him actually be a receiver in Carolina, and we're not really seeing that here in Buffalo either. So it's definitely frustrating after these 2 duds on offense, especially in this latter game where the defense really did respond nicely and do their part to get the Bills back into this game.
To Stefan Diggs' credit, I listened to his post-game press conference, and really everything about this week and the way that he handled it and the way that he talked about it, he's professional as professional gets. And
Right.
that was kind of like the knock on him, in the way that things ended in Buffalo was a lack of professionalism. But now you're sitting here as the Texans sit at 4-1, the Bills at 3-2, and coaching questions continuing to be a topic. And, Josh Allen having the most just unthinkable game against Stefon Diggs. You think about that tweet in March from Diggs. Are you sure that Josh Allen doesn't need a wide receiver 1? And then you come away from this game asking that same question as the entire collection of receivers that they put together just didn't get the job done. I mean, Keon Coleman, for as great as that touchdown was, 7 plays earlier, I think it was an RPO play. I have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, I think so.
But he didn't know that it was he didn't get the memo, or maybe Allen didn't get the memo in how he called it. He throws the ball, and Keon Coleman is blocking, and it hits him in the back of the helmet. And so, I definitely think I'm not moving off the fact that I do think, after thinking about everything, I think the Bills need to go in a different direction. I think Diggs need to go in a different direction. I don't think it was healthy for either side. Right. But the way the Bills pivoted right now after these last 2 games against AFC contenders, they haven't had enough offensive firepower to compete with both of these teams. And this was a game against the Houston Texans where not even halfway through, they lost their best player. And the Bills still couldn't do anything about it.
No. I mean, obviously it helped the defense out once he was out of the game, but that was that, glimmer for the team to kind of come back and win this. And they fight their way back. They get to where they need to be. And, we'll never know. Had the Bills run the ball 3 straight times, will they've gotten a first down? Would the Texans have burned all 3 times out and not had enough to even set up for that long field goal? You never quite know, but the coaching let them down at the end. The offense let them down throughout the game. Allen being 9 for 30. Some of the hits that he took, the hit late in the game, where his head bounced off the turf like that was definitely a scary moment. Luckily, he was put into the blue tent, was cleared rather quickly, it seemed. But a lot of things just went wrong for this offense today. And after such a hot start, Joe Brady needs to get back to the drawing board and figure out what he needs to do to get this offense back on track. That might be running the ball more, trusting that run game, because when it's going and they get away from it, it's the most baffling thing. It was the first series of the game. Cook ran for 7 yards on the first play of the game, and then they pass, and punt 3 and out. He was running well at times, and I get sometimes you get a little bit too predictable, but lean on that. It'll help Josh Allen. It'll help with the play action pass. This offense specifically needs to be a lot better going forward, and the head coaching position needs to be a lot better going forward.
Got a lot of people watching live, over 2,000 across all platforms. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending some of your Sunday with us on the heels of a disappointing Bills 23-20 loss here in Houston at NRG Stadium. Houston, by the way, I don't want to throw shade, but not great. Not great. I'm not a big fan of Houston. I don't know. Like the food's good. Food's good. Don't get me wrong. But I'm looking forward to that Seattle trip in a couple of weeks. I don't think this Jets game is must win. I think it's too early for that. I think sometimes we're so reactive and hyperbolic in the NFL circles because it's a week-to-week league and so much happens, and we spend so much time during the week talking about these singular events or how events unfold in a given Sunday. But I do think that Jets game next week is super important with how the rest of this thing. I mean, the Jets, in a lot of ways, I don't know if they're on the ropes per se, but they're hanging by a thread. Yeah. I mean, it seems like a convincing win by the Bills next Monday in New Jersey could really send that organization into a tailspin that could result in, Robert Saleh getting fired, a panic move, overpaying for Devontae Adams because they know that – I don't think Devontae Adams is fixing that offense, by the way. I think Aaron Rodgers looks absolutely abysmal, and so we'll see. But it is a massive game next week in New Jersey, and I think the best-case scenario is you get Shakir back, you hopefully get Oliver back, you hopefully get Taron Johnson back, which, by the way, man, they miss him. I know the defense stepped up and played well today. They need him back. And then the offense has to flip the script and get back to what they were doing the first 3 games of the season. And I'll tell you, that Jacksonville Jaguars team the last 2 weeks has looked pretty good.
Yeah, they have. And kudos to the Bills for the way that they were able to beat them so badly on both sides of the ball. I'm with you. This upcoming Monday night game is not must win in terms of the season, but it almost feels like they need it in terms of getting the momentum back on their side, righting the ship in a way. It could have a long-lasting effect on the Jets as well, as you mentioned, whose offense has really struggled. Today's offense was about force-feeding the ball to Garrett Wilson and almost got them back into the game. But you can see the frustration coming through in Rodgers' game. There was one point early on, I think it was after his first turnover, he just sat on the bench, didn't go over to his receivers, didn't go to his linemen, just kind of sat and stewed while Tyrod Taylor had to go around to all the teammates and kind of tell them it's all right, we'll get it back. Late in the game, he throws the interception to Stefan Gilmore. And again, you kind of see that he still can make some really nice plays at times, but he's not going to be that MVP caliber player that he was in Green Bay. With the Jets, and the Jets are going to need a lot more if they want to get back in the AFC East picture, but also is being viewed as a legitimate AFC contender.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back in a couple of days. If you want to sign up to become an insider, do that. 716-528-6727. The Shout Insider text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litra, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234. Check out litralaw.com. I'm going to watch this one back later tonight, and I'll have some thoughts on it in the morning while I'm traveling. For all of our insiders, it's a tough one, but it's a long season. And I think the Sean McDermott storyline is not going away anytime soon, Ryan. Like, this is going to be something. This is a guy that's as polarizing in the fan base as maybe anybody has ever been. And like, he's at least in the top 3 of the power rankings. And there is a definitive group in the fan base that are ready to turn the page, that are ready to call it. And even if it's in season right now, I don't think it's an in-season move. I think it is you play this thing out, you see where you get, but like we're adding these kinds of games to the resume and to the the memory banks, and the more that you add into it, the harder it gets to kind of move past it. And now you have to wonder, like, the locker room rallied around him last year, but now without Stefan Diggs, without some of the other stuff, you got to wonder if they're going to keep continuing to do that.
Time runs out on everyone over at some point in time, and the way that he coaches in big moments has been a major letdown. We have seen in this league before, Matt, good coaches get teams so far where they always kind of spiral out and lose, and then if they make the replacement, the following year is the year that they win it all, the year that they go on that deep run. And I'm not saying that's a sure thing for Buffalo if that were to happen. I like McDermott; he's done a lot of good for this team. But you do have to start wondering if this is as far as this team can get with him as head coach.
All right, that'll do it. We'll see you in a few days. Take care. Enjoy what rest of your weekend you have left.